2 photos in the same day, apple orchard. And I found out quickly, I finished both paintings, and one of them had pizzazz, and the other one I still have in my closet. Because the light wasn't hitting quite right, there was nothing that gave it any interest, and they were 2 similar subject matters, and one worked and one didn't. So it was a good lesson for me. I mean, I'll never sell that painting, but it's a good lesson. Everything's a lesson. So I'll just hold up a couple of paintings. Here, let's start with this. Oh, thank you. I'll take that. I have a couple prints and a couple paintings I pulled off my wall tonight. I'll just hold it here. What interested me about this is the different textures, and they're real personal items. The silver pitcher is very old. It's a prize that my husband's Scottish grandfather won in a lawn bowling tournament when he immigrated to Chicago. So it's sort of tarnished and old, and I was trying to capture the metal and then the pottery behind it, and then the cloth was a gift. So I was working with textures, and that was what excited me about doing it. And but I'm not going to sell this one because it's more personal. And I don't know how many of you went to the Finger Lakes exhibit at the Memorial Art Gallery. I don't know. This summer I was fortunate enough to get, it wasn't this painting, but I had two paintings of oranges the same time I set up both of them. They were from different angles and everything. But this is another example of, so I don't have a fancy way, the light box. Who was here? Bill, you were talking about the light box. I don't have a fancy way. If you could have seen me setting this up, you would probably laugh, because I was like trying lights every which way and contorting myself and trying different angles for photos. And but I do lots of layers. So underneath that orange is all kinds of intense yellows, and then I build it up with leaving some areas unfinished and other areas not unfinished, but leave some without touching them again, and others have many, many, many layers, especially the dark backgrounds. Thank you. This original painting is at the gallery that we just opened, so I brought just a print I have of it. And that was interesting to see me set that up, because I was taking it all through the house and I wanted the striped fabric and the oranges, and the stripes were really red. But I wanted the colors, I wanted to play with the complementary colors and stuff. So I was throwing them on beds and angling things and pillows just to get everything to lay the way I wanted it to. And then the lights again. But what's easy is when you just see something outside. Like, I've done a lot of things in farmers markets, and that, you're just getting the natural light, and when you see something, you just grab a photo then. And that's the easier way. My husband used to block for me. When we lived in Madison, Wisconsin, we'd be going around the square where they have their farmers market, and it'd be really crowded. I'd say, oh, look at that, I really want that. And he'd say, okay, get ready. Because there's so many people trying to get up to the table, you can't get a good shot. So he would go over and pretend he was going to buy something so that nobody could get in the area that I needed the light, the shadow, and all that to be right, and then I could capture it. Yes?
When you do a still life in your home and set it up, do you photograph that, or do you work directly from the still life?
When I'm doing watercolor, I have to tell you, primarily I work from photos, because I'm stopping and starting over a period of time. I don't do them all like in 1 hour usually. I'm going to do a demo that's more, I could consider more of a study. But I do paint from life other times, and especially outside.
Oh, I was just curious if you do that.
I do want to do that, but I don't really have a way to set it up in my home right now. My studio is half art studio and half graphic design computer office type of area, and I move back and forth. So I'm standing when I paint, and I'm sitting when I work on graphics. But I'm doing more painting than anything now, so that's the way I like it.
Thank you.
Okay. Then I guess, yeah. I love doing florals too because it's just endlessly interesting and all the colors you get and the textures you get and everything. So these were lilacs last spring from my yard, and actually the tree looked horrible. These were the only blossoms I found on it, but I put them in this this green fish vase, and I really liked the green vase, and it's just sort of quirky and odd, and then the purple lilacs, and well, I can't really point with it here, but you know, I'm paying particular attention to the warm and the cool areas. That they're kind of subtle shifts, but that's interesting to me too, and helps shape it. Yes.
I was always encouraged not to use a dark frame, so why did you? For watercolor and.
Oh no. Well, my paintings aren't really wishy-washy. I mean, they're not light. I should say wishy-washy. They're not light, so I like them because, and they always have a mat. I like them because they can be used in somebody's home, whether it's traditional or contemporary. People might not be turned off by the frame. They can always reframe it, but I keep them consistent because the subject matter might be changing, lots of things might be changing, but that ties everything together.
So all of yours are framed similarly to that?
Yeah, I used to do them in metal frames, but it would still be like a thin matte black, and now I have them framed in matte black wood. Yeah, I don't know, it's a preference. Okay. So before I forget to mention it, thank you. I teach at Flower City Art Center a little bit, and I also have a workshop that still has a couple of spots in it coming up 2 Saturdays in February. One workshop, 2 Saturdays. If anybody's interested, I have some business cards up here. Before you leave, you can grab it and go on the site if you want to do that. Okay, I will try to, I wanted to talk a little bit quickly about just so you can, I wonder if I can do it this way. So this is an example of something at the farmer's market, or I guess it's the public market here. And it's very, very busy. There's a lot going on, but I still was interested in the shapes and trying to make something interesting out of something very monochromatic. And I cropped it down to that because I love what's going on in between in the basket weave, and then the shadows that it throws on some of them. And then it's hard to tell here, but there's like purples and golds and blues going on. So that's what I'm working on. One of the paintings I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of how I start. Let's see if I can hold it still enough. So I grid out that. I don't know if you noticed a grid on the photo. Okay. I do that in the computer, and I sometimes make other adjustments in the computer. And then I add a grid so that I can do a drawing to the size I want. So I do a drawing on a different sheet of paper, and then I transfer it down so that it keeps it nice and clean. So I'm not getting lots of scribbly lines that I have to erase to keep the paper from being affected. And then I start working on blocking in colors, and I start with the lightest color of that particular area. So if it's a really intense gold, it's probably got a light tan going on someplace or something. So that's what you see here is I've started with the lightest color, and I work my way around just helping myself map it out. And then I'll start going in and doing each separate section and shaping it with lots of layers. I'm not going to demo on this one because it's too monochromatic. Okay.
All right, spin that now.
Yeah. So I'll start. I have a friend who has a sheep farm, and I have a couple photos I had of her that I thought, well, I'll just do the demo of her with a few of her sheep and her little farm in the background. And who knows what's going to happen, whether it'll work or not. I mean, there are many failures. But I started it a little bit earlier today because sometimes it just takes long before I can work on another layer. I thought I'd get a little bit of it done, and then we'll see how far I get. And then I want you all to stop me when I'm running over. Okay, I'll have to set this down, and I'll try to talk loudly if I'm explaining something.
Yeah.
A mic stand? There is a mic stand. If we put that by you?
Put it by the east.
If she could. If she.
How many people here paint in watercolor? There are quite a few. Well, I think it's what I love the most. I use acrylics because I don't mind using them indoors and I can do big pieces. And I use oil for outside because I can make changes and the light's changing so fast and it's more opaque, so I don't have to do as many layers. But if I had to pick one medium only, it would be watercolor. And I love the way the brush and the water flow and all that. Oh, is that what that was? I thought you said that.
Does that work?
I don't know. Is it on? Can you hear me?
You may have to talk.
Well, I might not. I'll lose.
Yeah, that's working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So my friend Melissa. Here's what I'm working with. Whoop. I have to think backwards here. Speaking of thinking backwards, as you know, if you paint in watercolor, it's backwards from everything else, where you have to leave your whites and work light to dark and all of that. So you just have to think differently, and of course you get used to that. So I decided as I was doing the drawing to make some adjustments. I don't want quite as much focus back here, even though it's lit up. I want the focus to be here. But I started blocking in the basic colors, and I don't have to worry about detail too much at this point. And so I started out with, let me tape this on here so I don't lose it. So this is the printout I did of it with a grid, or actually I drew this grid on here because I was teaching last night when I started it. And then I redrew it, and I usually work much larger, but I thought I might get farther if it wasn't quite so large. So I redrew it and I adjusted some things. I moved, the barn a little bit and some of the shadows and stuff. I'm going to make sure the highlight on the sheep, instead of stopping here, it might come over and catch a little bit more because I think that'll be interesting to sort of catch that backlighting. When you see what I started, it's super gaudy. And you have to trust that there's always an ugly stage to a painting where I feel like I'm going to throw it away. And I've learned just to keep sticking with it, and usually I can resolve it. But it's gaudy because see these bright grassy areas where the light's hitting. I'm starting with that underneath everything, all of the grass, and then I'll come in with a darker green. And you can always mute a color or tone it down, but you can't bring that vibrancy back again. Okay. So I figured out the size I was going to do, and I drew it up with the grid, and then I took a pen. It was a pencil, just scratchy pencil drawing, and then I took a pen so I could see where I went. And after transferring, there's graphite on the back. And then I laid it back down, drew with the pen, and got my drawing on there. So I'm just doing the early blocking in stages. I'm paying attention to color shifts, cool and warm. That's really important to me. I mean, I think, well, as I'm drawing and as I'm getting this initial painting down, I'm thinking through some of that. Yes, so let's see. I think I'm going to get rid of some of that gaudy grass because it's going to drive me crazy. So I'll start by getting a different green that'll, it might not be the finished green, but it'll at least block in the areas that have shade, and they're cooler. So I don't have like a set way I mix this color and that color. I just adjust as I need to. Oh, I kind of want to do this with it, or I want to do that with it, so I'll add what I need to until I get there.
Do you have a preferred brand of paint?
I use Daniel Smith primarily. I just always used it and liked it, so I always have to have a scrap of paper. So I stuck with it. I do have some other ones I've tried, and they're fine. It's just that most of my paints are Daniel Smith, so.
Kathy,
All right.
Kathy, can you see the difference? I mean, so just so that we know that big screen, it shows yellow.
Oh yeah, it's not a very accurate color. That looks really yellow, and I don't know if anybody can tell. It's definitely green.
Yeah, I'm just,
That's a good point.
well, I don't know, that's cute.
I can't do anything about it,
Yeah.
but you could kind of look afterwards or something.
What was the point of the little painting in the bottom tree?
Oh, I was demoing this last night for my class before they start on their paintings to do a value sketch. Just taking a dark color and just 2 or 3 values and then white. And then seeing where you need to adjust. Because when I look at this, if you squint, which is how you can easily see the values, all of this is blending together. So, and this sheet too. So I think I'm going to keep the grass not quite as dark as I saw it. It just helps you figure out where to adjust. And I'm sorry, all this stuff is just like showing them little things.
I got my meal on the way down.
Because it's grass, I don't need it to be all exactly the same. So sometimes I'll just mix my colors a little bit as I go.
Kathy, are we able to ask questions as you're going?
Sure.
Do you do wet on wet? Or are
I
you-
do wet on wet in certain areas, or for skies that I want certain effects. It just depends on what I'm painting. I'm
Are
not
you
sure who asked.
Primarily, you emphasize glazing.
Yeah, that's just how I'm used to working. I can solve a lot of problems with glazing, and I just find it easier to control it. I mean, I admire people that can do super loose, wonderful paintings all wet on wet, but I find I do better when it's kind of a combination of those. There's a couple of chickens up there too that I want to get at some point. And I also, well, you probably all know about a thirsty brush. If you paint in watercolor, you probably do. But a thirsty brush is one that's been wet and then mostly dry, and it comes in handy all the time. Like if I want to soften an area, I use a thirsty brush on the edge like that. You can use the same brush and wipe it out, but then it's just harder to get back to where you were. So sometimes I forget to grab a separate brush.
And what does that do?
Well, it does a lot of things, but it can soak up excess paint, but also it can soften edges. I might just mix a little more of a tannish in there. I purposely ended this sheet so that they weren't so lined up as my. And if I don't like how this looks, I can always like go over with another glaze. But right now I'm just trying to take away some of the garishness of that bright green. Lose his ear. And I decided I didn't want her shirt to be the same color as the pants. And yet I didn't want it to get lost in green either, so I made it more of a purple. But right now, it's the brightest, lightest area of purple, and then when I put shadows in, it won't look that. Wow, it looks blue there. It's really not.
Thank you, Ken, for sending this.
Not a green, not a green, not my favorite color. There's too much of it. It's my favorite color in little bits. Let's put it that way.
Do you teach watercolor at the Genesee Art Center?
No?
Do you teach watercolor at all?
Oh yeah, so I've only been in Rochester for 2.5 years. But I taught a class that I just put together myself at the Rondecourt Library last winter, about this time last year. And then I was asked to teach at the Flower City Arts Center.
Oh, Flower City, yes.
Yeah. So I did that last fall, and I'm teaching there right now. And then I set up a couple of times I'm at the Anderson Arts building. I have a friend whose studio I rent out. That's where I'm going to be having the 2-day, full-day workshop. So various places, but now that we have the gallery going, there is a room there. I just have to figure out how I can fit watercolor in there, because it's a room to teach in the back, but it's not that big. So I'm not quite sure.
Do you generally hold your brush?
That close?
No, that way.
Oh, probably not, but when I have things to work around, I think I just automatically did that. But if I'm working bigger and I'm like doing washes, I'm not. So this is pretty small for me. Feels small. Normally, if I'm glazing, I let things dry all the way before I do the next glaze. But because this doesn't have to be nice and smooth, I'm just like throwing it in there. I want to cool it off a little bit here. I won't leave that like that. I'll soften it and add some detail later, but for now, I consider this just still blocking things in.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm considering this more as a study, and I think if I finish it and feel like there's some hope, maybe I would do it bigger. So there would be things like maybe where I wanted to hold some of the little straw pieces, I might at a certain point get some color on there, and then at a certain point I might use a little masking, just a little bit, so that it would have some lighter areas in there. But I think for now I'll just, just do it with my brush. Are you guys tired of green? Want it to be a little cooler under his belly where it's shadow. I don't know what this shadow's from. It must be a tree shadow because it goes way over here. Oh, there's a little hole here where I never put any green earlier. And we'll see what, it'll probably look different because I don't have the same color underneath. But it's such a small area, it's probably not going to be that noticeable. So her pants, they're blue jeans, obviously don't have that white patch, but I left it so that when I go over it with another layer, that will be lighter than this. I'll just use the same. Keep it kind of simple. I don't want too much detail. But this is wet, so I probably shouldn't do it yet. Let's see. And typically when I'm working, I'm at my drawing table, which is tilted up at this height, and I can just grab the board and spin it around. So it feels a little awkward to not have that while I'm working here, but hopefully it still will work. There's a little fence back here. I just move around to an area that's not wet. At a certain point, it doesn't really matter. I don't have to do it any particular way, but it just so that I don't accidentally wreck things, I'll just move to another area. This is just a little fence back here with ivy or something growing. And then it gets pretty dark back there for the trees, so maybe I'll use a thinner brush. Basically just want to get it dark enough back there that it makes the vines and stuff show here. And I might spend a little bit more time doing detail. It's far in the background, but just a little bit more defined if I was working on a bigger version of it. But you could see how I put the yellow down in the background because it's backlit. Even though not very much of it will show, I still wanted to start with that. Maybe just a little bit of a reddish color would be nice.
Do you ever use colored papers?
No, I never have you? Is there colored watercolor paper? I don't know. I never have, no. I would it would affect every color that you put down since watercolor is transparent. And it would be hard to know what you were going to get. I suppose it'd be good to experiment with. It might turn out great, but
Have you done anything on U-boat?
I haven't. I know a lot of people do, but here's my theory is that I wouldn't like it because you don't have much control, right?
Right, yeah.
Not as much.
You fight with it a little.
Have you used it?
You're just playing with it.
Uh-huh. What do you think?
It's scary.
That's why I like it.
You know, there is an artist that was she's from Germany. She was featured in a magazine. I can't remember which one, Watercolor magazine or Artist magazine. Her name is Elke Memler, and she is phenomenal. I don't know that she does Yupo, but talk about loose and wet and beautiful. I love her work. I don't paint anything like her, but boy, I wish I did.
Elke Memler?
Elke, I think it's E-L-K-E, M-E-M-M-L-E-R. So instead of using a brown, I quite often grab purples. You know, a purple and a yellow is going to give you a brown, and it's just using blues and purples and things like that instead of mixing grays. You're going to end up with more interesting things going on. All right, so I'll put my little chicken in so I don't accidentally turn it into foliage.
So when you took the photograph originally, were you thinking of composition then?
Only as you do when you take a photo. You know, I wasn't thinking it was a painting. I was taking a picture of my friend. But I was out there teaching a workshop on her farm because she'd asked me to, and it was a beautiful day. It was really fun. But I wasn't particularly doing it for. I think I'm just going to put down like the lightest version of this, and then I'll shape it a little bit more, but just so that I know this chicken's here.
So this would be your second, is this in a way really your second glazing, what you're doing right now?
Well, I haven't covered the whole thing, so like this chicken, I mean, this is the first time I'm putting it down, but most of it's blocked in. So yeah, I'm like.
And so how many more layers would you have?
It would depend upon the painting. This won't have as many as like the ones with the dark backgrounds, things like that. Where I probably did 8 layers to get it that dark. Which is tricky because you probably all know, like you're trying to get a smooth layer and you're working around things and you have to keep doing it over and over. But you could just get a richer color, and it's just richer than if you just put 1 layer on of a dark paint.
It looks more velvety sometimes.
Yeah, you can get some really nice effects. So
Are you using your paint colors out of the tube, or do you mix them?
no, I almost always mix them. Like there's a color here, and I don't know if you can see it. It's the gaudiest green in the world. See if you can.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and I would never be able to use this anywhere. But I found that it's light and bright and cool. So I keep it on my palette, and then you add a little red, tiny bit, and it just makes it more natural. But it's shouldn't have probably put it there. I'll be sorry. So this poor little chicken, he kind of all it all merged together a little too dark. And so I'm pulling some of it out. I'm drying my brush, using that thirsty brush, and I'm pulling a little bit of the color out where I see that it's a little lighter. Oddly, it's lighter kind of underneath here because of the way the light's hitting. And the other chicken is pretty dark, so I'll probably just go ahead and do like a what do we want to use for that? Probably I should wait and do this chicken till I get this done, because this is not really done at all, but I'll go ahead. He's pretty much all in color. I could kind of make some lighter tones of like a blue where the light hits or something. No, it's not very blue. I use my paper towel almost as much as my brushes, because it can just help you control something. If something gets out of the lines or something, and you fold it over and press it down really hard, it just stops it right there. It's really wonderful. Okay.
Kathy, would you object to our taking a photograph?
Oh no, that's fine. Thanks for asking. But I don't mind. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I objected, it'd be trouble. So I see all these beautiful little fuzzy ridges in there, and that'll take a little while, but I don't want to draw in every little thing. So as I do a layer here and a layer there, I might just, you know, if I have a color that's dark brown or something, I just might start nudging where they'll be, and not worry too much that I've got every detail, but then as I go over it again, it'll start looking more and more like fur. Or I guess it's not, what is it called, fur on a sheep?
Oh.
Fleece?
Oh, fleece. Woolly
Fleece.
wool.
Yes.
Or woolly wool.
But I love all these little folds. And I probably, if I was painting this, I think I might give this to Melissa if it turns out. So I put this markings in there because they're her sheep and she'll know them. But if I was doing it just for the painting itself, I would probably leave them off because they're a little, I don't know, they don't serve a good purpose. But for her, she knows who they are. It will matter. And there's a lot, like with the lilacs and anything with a lot of detail, you do a lot of pushing and pulling. So like if this was darker, I could just like, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. You can just take your wet brush like that and get some shape out of it. So when I'm doing paintings, I'll put darks in and pull some out. I just keep doing that until I get where I want it. Of course, this is going to get much darker, but I wanted a reddish under it so that instead of being white here, it's really red at the top where the light's hitting. Maybe I should do him next. I'll do a few more. A few more of these guys. Oh, it's kind of green. Looks like I have an Old English sheepdog for a pet, and they don't have tails. And if she has her legs wet, she really looks like sheep. And this has reminded me of her fur. I mean, I don't think that's why they were called sheepdogs. I think it's because they would herd them.
Yes.
She has herding instincts in that every time anybody tries to leave our house, she gets very, very, very upset, even if she's not alone. And we would have work done on our house, and when the workmen would go home for the day, she'd be really upset. They weren't in the herd. And then I'm paying attention to the angles that the fur is going. I kind of did that when I was doing the drawing. I marked sort of which way it was going, and, so that I got it right. Can't really see how the ear goes. I'm kind of making it up because it's too hard to figure out in the photograph. Now I see here it's cooler, so instead of using the tan, I'm going to shift to more of a bluish gray. Really light. And this is where the thirsty brush comes in handy. legs are too skinny. So I'm gonna
From this angle, it looks like a light blue for the shading there. Is that what you're using?
it's not a light blue, it's actually very gray looking, but it was made with blue in it. Yeah, that's interesting, because what it's doing is sort of filtering it so you get more extreme of whether it's, so I don't know if you noticed how I just wet this, scrubbed it, because the green grass was kind of taking over his leg. So I'm doing that and then I'm blotting it to fix it. All right, I'm going to do this guy now, I think. Still really red. How am I doing? What time do I need to stop?
Like nine probably, right?
Oh.
Usually wrap up by 9.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get a rich reddish brown, which I think that might work. Might look too red on there, we'll see. And I'm going to come in here and do trying to see how this fuzzy part's kind of fun. I should use a tinier brush, but to work around that, because that will be really setting off this sheep in the foreground and the light along the back. And then I want to keep this ridge here too, so that there's the light here.
What color are you using?
I mixed a bunch of things together, but I had like a quinacridone sienna. I put some purple in it. That was more of a quin purple, and then I might have put a little burnt scarlet.
Yeah, okay.
I honestly, I just play with it till I get what I want. And I'll need to put a darker, little details that are darker in here too. But I'll let this dry. I'll just move on to something
Does
else.
she use the wool herself or sell it?
I don't know. I really don't know. She just has had the sheep for a few years. Like, it's kind of a new thing, and she got it more, it's like a retreat center where artists and things can go, or musicians. She lives near Ithaca. But she probably does at least sell the fleece. I don't know. Now, that's a little too choppy looking, so I'll probably go over it again so that there's some definition, but it's not quite so. It's all very one tone too, so that's.
Happy birthday again, Norma.
Happy birthday. Oh,
My dad, we're having a party for my dad for his 90th this Saturday.
Oh, wow. Where's he live?
He lives down, do you know where Barton is? Not far from Waverly, which is in between, along 86, in between Elmira and Owego, that area. And he is amazing. He goes out and cuts down trees and heats his whole house and builds things constantly. He's just amazing. I hope it got his genes, but who knows? And the nose of this, I don't know if you can tell, but this is the nose right here where it gets a little lighter. And it doesn't really read correctly, but again, because I might give it to Melissa, that's the way her sheep is. So I'm going to go ahead and paint it that way. Yeah, her hand I would need to take a little more time with. It's a little scary looking right now. I'll take some light, cool blue grays and come over and maybe put a little bit more detail in his shadow side of the light sheet. Maybe too much. Maybe a little. I can't even see his eye, so I'll just have to guess. And I'll make this darker, but I'll just say it's somewhere around there.
Did you study figure drawing too? Also, I mean.
I had it when I was in school, yeah. And occasionally, when I remembered to go at the Rochester Art Club, which I'm a member of, they have a Thursday afternoon painting from life. This town is pretty amazing. I can't believe all the opportunities there are. So there's all these different days in different places. But I went last week, and that was fun, but I won't get there this week. Now her hair is going to get much, much darker, but I just didn't want to start there. Or, you know, it was a little harsh at first. Carefully. You can see I'm not going to get this done tonight.
You're making amazing progress.
I usually take much longer with my painting, so
You're zipping right along.
I'll work on something for maybe an hour and then I'll stop and do something else. Or I like to work on more than one painting at a time, just so that if you get tired of too much green or you're waiting for something to dry, you don't jump in too soon. It helps.
Sticking his chin out a little.
Chin out,
Chin
yeah.
out.
Throw it back, throw
Takes care of those wrinkles.
Get those boobies out.
Getting a little rowdy in the crowd.
They're getting punchy. Yeah, yes it is. That is.
Get rid of that white spot on her pants. That's going to bug me. So now, like, this is what I mean by glazing. I can just go over this whole thing, and it's going to stay lighter where I left that white spot. Then while it's still wet, I can still adjust darks and lights. I don't want to hold you up. Did you want to stop here? I'm not going to get it done anyway.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, yeah, so you have time.
Thank you so much.
Sure. I wish I had finished painting, but thanks, everybody. And again, I've got cards here if anybody's interested. First, I probably put
Because I took theirs off.
a color down that was light or
Too many things.
tan or
on
yellow,
bags, you know?
and then when it dries,
Yeah.
I have masking fluid that has a little needle point, and I would probably just scribble it, just to the foreground area, and then if I washed over it, you'd still end up having some light areas. I don't really like masking fluid, but sometimes you kind of have to.
I want to see what
Oh,
brand
so
it
what I
is.
did,
Have to, but
when I would go
See if she
out,
uses
if you're trying to do a flat wash and there are
So
little
good,
thin
it has
highlights,
no
you don't want to
name
lose it, you don't want to try to.
She must have it custom made.